All right, we're gonna slate this, so here we go, scene 2, take 1.
What I was trying to do and just sort of prep for this, I was just going through files. I had a list of things, that she might have worked on, and I wasn't getting anywhere. So finally I said, I just called Carol. It's 8 o'clock at night, answers the phone, the television's blurring on the other side, and she said, John Schleining, hey! And in 2 minutes, we were just having the best time. We chatted a little bit, and they said, I've got some questions for him. What was your role on Mount St. Helens? I don't know. I was just part of the team. And so then I said, what about Artquake? Well, I didn't have an official role. I just loved what they were trying to do, so I'm just a booster. And everything I tried, I got the same thing. Nah, that's not me. I'm just part of it. I just want to be part of it. I said, Carol, you're not helping. I'm looking for something. She said, well, that's who I am. And I said, well, I'll tell you the truth. I just, from my point of view, you really like people. You really love people. And she said, that's it. She said, that's it. She said, I love people. She said, and this is Carol. She says, let me give you the backstory.
She never aspired to be a starchitect.
Carol just exemplified collaboration. If you want to talk about a collaborator, you'd grab Carol first.
She really wanted to make practical spaces.
Unlike other interior people, she was integral to architecture and the profession of architecture.
She brought an architect's sensibility to interiors that made her particularly special.
The interiors didn't become a surface element, it became part of the three-dimensional space.
It had to really fit the people who were going to be using it.
She loved ideas, she loved people, and she loved the idea of solving problems. Her community spirit just led you to get swept up by it.
I was born and raised in New York City. I grew up in New York, in Manhattan, which of course is the best borough of all. And I went to Hunter Model Elementary School, which was the experimental school of Hunter College. And so it was a great education, and I loved it. And I loved Manhattan, and I loved growing up in the city and roller skating on my block and, just being a kid. I was the oldest of 3 girls. My mother was sort of interested in the arts. She played the piano, and she wanted her girls to grow up nicely. My father was an engineer, and he was one of the really smart, poor kids, first generation immigrated from Europe, and he wanted to make sure his girls had a good education. When I first went to college, I was an art student. And it occurred to me as the year went on that if I was an artist, I'd be in a studio all by myself for the better part of the day. And that was not going to cut it. But I just thought, well, I'll just go be an architect. I mean, I do things like that. It's not being impetuous, but buildings are cool and architecture is cool, so I'll go do that. And actually, I'm not telling you the whole truth. There was this guy who had seen some of my paintings. He had transferred into the architecture school, and he said, I want to meet the person who did this work. I thought, well, he's kind of cool. And that was the guy I ended up eventually marrying. My husband got drafted, and he was stationed in Fort Niagara, but he found out he could get out of the Army a couple of months early if he was a teacher. So he immediately wrote to colleges all over the country, hire me, hire me, hire me. So U of O hired him. That's how we landed in Oregon. Local Eugene in the 50s was really a nice place. There were 4 firms in Eugene in those days, a long time ago. And Each one of them told me a version of the same story. Oh, very impressive resume. Cornell, oh, really? You know, I would love to hire you, but either the boys in the drafting room, you know, their language is bad, or my wife would be appalled if it was or, you know, there were 3 or 4 stories, and by the time that was over, I figured, the hell with that. So I marched down to the Bon Marché, which was the department store in Eugene, and I got hired as a display director. I knew nothing about display. I know nothing about fashion, nothing about anything, but I thought, hey, I'm not gonna do nothing. So I did that. We ended up in Portland. Skidmore, Owings & Merrill was a huge architectural firm, and I went in and I got hired, and I loved it. I think the major thing I took away from them is it's all organization. You want to make a building, even if you want to make a painting, you know, you have to have organization behind it. They had sort of mastered the system. Project management, design was a whole thing in itself. Client relations. They wrote the book on it. And it allowed people like me to go, oh, okay, that's the way we do it. I learned the foundation of what it takes to become an architect. You figure out what is really asked for, figure out what is it going to take to do it, and then you go ahead and do it. And then everybody's happy. And it's true.
When she opened up her office here in Portland, I had just opened up my little basement art studio.
I got a call from this young artist, and he said, I'm coming to Portland, and I'd like to, you know, interview with your firm. And I said, fine. So he came.
After I gave my presentation, she said, you know, I've got a project that maybe I could involve you in.
I have no idea what he said, but whatever he said, and whatever, I thought, that's the guy.
And the project was a Chinese restaurant.
We were hired to do Uncle Chen's restaurant. You walked in to what had been just a tall space, and then it opened up to a 4-story skylight. And so he said, oh, well, of course, we'll do the Flying Dragon. I think it just gave me the courage of my convictions more. And, you know, the success with the different players, they were all very different one from another, and the fact that I could work well with all of them and deliver what they all wanted, and it was great.
She taught me from the very beginning that you sit down and you listen.
Her listening was always focused on what questions a project was asking. What does this building want? Not only was she listening to the people around her, but she was listening to the project or to the challenge.
She would listen and kind of formulate a path.
She's asking questions and she's guiding us.
She loved being devil's advocate, and she loved asking the tough questions, and she thought way ahead.
I think it's part of her really deep-seated belief that collaboration and teamwork is how she likes to work.
She has a affinity of incorporating the client into this in a way that they felt part of the team.
She worked with SRG on the Mount St. Helens Interpretive Center.
Mount St. Helens, we were dealing with the Forest Service. You just had this big blast. We were saying, we're going to do something fantastic out there. Forest Service didn't want anything of that. They didn't want to frighten kids. They didn't want to frighten the public. And Carol put them at ease. We'd sit and chat, and you'd see these people just relax. They said, this is like a window into nature, the regenerative power of what nature brings. Well, Carol just gobbled that up. because it meant materials and fabrics and stone and wood and art and all of those things. It's part of what nature's about. How it regenerates itself and how it becomes integral to what we create and what we do. The blending was just perfect.
Crater Lake Lodge is a great project for her. Those projects are really unique and unique to Carol. The convention center was designed by Zimmer Gunsel Frasca, and Portland was at the forefront in the country of commissioning art for public buildings.
They hadn't even broken ground when we started talking about how to put almost $1 million of artists' hands into this building.
I was asked to be on the selection panel with Carol. We approached this as this is a great opportunity to make a place where people from out of state are going to see why we think this is such a unique state.
If you're going to design something for people, it needs to have a life beyond just what the building is. Bringing artist points of view does nothing but make it better. And I remember once it opened, Metro put a big ad in some publication, and the caption said, "Most convention centers don't look like art museums."
Carol was always looking for good young talent.
I think it gives her a lot of satisfaction to help someone come along and open doors for them.
I first met Carol pretty soon out of college, and that was a life changer for me. She walked in and she exuded this energy that I could tell I wanted to be around, that I felt like she would be a good mentor. Carol taught me to know my strengths and my weaknesses and own them. I just loved watching the process. So she was a great influence both on career and just in growing.
Carol and Alf and their kids loved being in Oregon. I mean, they built a place at Cascade Head that was a real refuge for them. Carol ran hood to coast, in the middle of the night, in the dark, on gravel roads. You don't do that unless you really love the landscape. She started her own business, but she also started some other businesses.
They started Hot Lips Pizza.
Her husband, Al, started a bread company.
That and photography kind of became his passions.
She had Rose City Yogurt for a while. It was the first frozen yogurt store in Oregon.
She was that entrepreneurial type that was always trying to grow and improve the community.
It's hard to get a no out of Carol. She has supported lots of organizations and artists here over the years.
She was involved with the American Red Cross, with Portland Piano.
She's been a big supporter, as has Gina, of PNCA because of herself going to art school.
She was involved nationally as the head of the American Craft Council board.
And I think without blowing her horn here and there, she's made a huge difference in this community. He had a disease that I didn't know about until he got it. It just went really fast.
I mean, I thought I'd eventually retire from my work, but, eventually we'll think about it. But then when he died, it's like the light bulb went out. It literally did. He was the person that was right next to me. He was the guy. I stayed on in my firm for a couple of years, and I went, crap, I don't need this anymore. And I just gave the firm, to the people working in it. I said, it's yours. Those couple of years were just like, what? How am I going to get to the next day? I started playing the piano.
It was a real godsend for her at that point in her life to to start doing that. I think it's a story of family grit and business acumen, and not being afraid of taking chances. I think she just contributed where her soul wanted to take her.
Carol has touched so many people. She touched the art community because she was a collector and she brought us into her work. She made us more visible. By her doing that, that caught on with other architectural firms.
Carol's legacy to Portland, to architecture, is really how she brought the arts and the architecture component together so that they're more of a fluid piece versus separate entities. Now they're both thought of as one element that make a beautiful end result.
What she brings is this realization that the human spirit is so special that if you let it take its natural course and not trip over yourself, great things can happen. And she's just been responsible in our community for a lot of very great things happening.